Hello. Oh well, it may be a bit out of tune. I'm just trying to write a song. Um, Here I am to talk about something, and it also the discussion is rather boring, but I think also important. But it also proves that it shows that there's a method to my madness, and the reason I say that is that I released a video, and now the comments about it. It was only one comment. Are not on YouTube. They're on Facebook. It was kind of like, oh my God, just get on with it, right? Because I pontificate and then I cover all these corners and there are important things that I need to say. And it may bore people, right? But it's my platform, and if it bores them and they go away, that's fine. My aim is to make sure that there's a good reputation or a decent reputation for this band that I enjoy, right? Um, but there, generally, I spent a lot of time at the beginning of part two of my book review of Les's book, talking about how important it was that even though he seemed to despise Eric while he was writing the book, he did mention in the book that the band played on everything Once Upon a Star onward. And that's really important. And I'm going to get into the reason why that happened and why, even though he was saying nasty things, in my opinion, about Eric and his songwriting and his attitude and stuff like that. I mean, they had disagreements, and then they had legal issues in the future, right? Like, I'm not talking about in the Bay City Rollers era, but in the future there were legal issues, and I'm sure that put them at odds as well, right? Um, but the reason I wasted everyone's time, if you felt that way, was that it was very important that here was someone who had an opportunity to attack and to say that the band didn't play, and he didn't. And I'm going to get into why that is the case. And I'm going to get into how I try to conduct research and how the world does research, okay? And the reason I'm doing this is that, lo and behold, after doing that video and thinking, yeah, maybe I went on about this more than I should have because everyone knows that the Rollers played and that argument is done, lo and behold, on my channel, an argument breaks out once again saying they didn't play until It's a Game, right? And then there are complaints that apparently I've been told by Pat McGlynn, which I've never talked to Pat McGlynn, but I think some messages have been sent to me on behalf of him. But I don't trust that anything that's coming to me is from him. I mean, he can easily go onto YouTube and comment himself. I don't think he has to go through anyone. But generally saying that Pat McGlynn has already told me that it's all bullshit and that they didn't play on any of the albums until It's a Game. So, yeah, I thought I was flogging a dead horse. No, I wasn't, because here they come back again to say that the Bay City Rollers didn't play on their albums. So I'm going to discuss today how I do research. And how I do research is how I was taught in school and how many of us were taught in school to do research. And I'm going to give everyone a reminder on how you do these things. And generally, when you're doing research, you have two types of sources available to you. You have a primary source and a secondary source, right? And so a primary source would be, for example, I live in Canada. If Statistics Canada put out their census data, that would be considered a primary source. Is it always correct? There might be some issues in calculating some stuff, you know. As a matter of fact, we had a prime minister who tried to prevent them from providing statistics as much as possible. Because that informs public policy, and he didn't want to actually do that, right? But that's a whole other topic. But the point is, Statistics Canada, when they come out with their statistics after doing a census I don't know how often they do it, that's your primary source, okay? And then a secondary source would be someone writing a news article about the primary source, which would be the Statistics Canada statistics. Now, a secondary source has to have the ability to interpret that data, and we know that sometimes they get it wrong, and sometimes we have misleading news stories and stuff like that. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. A secondary source can have some very good information. Now, this is one thing I like about secondary sources. They can have information from several different places that are primary sources, and then they can combine all of that together to give you a picture. But the main thing about secondary sources is that a lot of, because it's not a primary source, you have to build integrity about what it is that you're presenting. And the way that you build integrity is to have as many primary sources as possible that are all in agreement about something, right? And then you can extrapolate from that. But if, as a secondary source, you lack primary sources and you jump to conclusions and you use hearsay more often than using primary sources, it's not going to be people are not going to have a lot of faith in what it is that you're doing. Now, so with the videos that I do, the very first video that I did, I think there was one major mistake I made in that video, and I said it was Eric's guitar on Shang-a-Lang, and it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. Because I do believe that the Eric's guitar sound was kind of copied for some of the records that that they may have brought in session musicians for. I don't know, but it's a tongue-in-cheek thing, and it was a mistake saying that, and I didn't think that video would actually get any views. It got way more views than I thought it would, and it really resonated with people. But other than that, so that first video was, and I think maybe the second one, is generally just opinion and secondhand knowledge, and I would say it's a secondary, resource. And the primary resources were not great. And then what happened was, a few groups of people attacked it and said that they knew more, and they knew that the Bay City Rollers didn't play on their records. And I know people are sick of me talking about this. Well, I'm sick of them, think how I feel. But anyway, they claimed to have information. And so I set out on a journey to get primary, get the primary information as much as possible. And so I'm going to show you what I use. So this, is primary. He was there when they recorded the albums. He is a witness. He published, I hope I'm not cutting off my microphone. He published a book, and that is very important. The reason that is very important is that when you publish something, you can be, if you lie and you defame someone, you can be held accountable in court, and it can cost you a lot. So when someone goes through the effort to do this and has someone helping, Lynn Elliott is helping, Lynn Elliott is going to be saying, well, did that happen? There are legal consequences if you say that this was the case and whatever. So what we get is, let's, at this point in time, despise Derek. But he cannot lie about what happened in the studio, and he states specifically that, in his knowledge, starting with the second album, there were no studio musicians except to augment the band, so string sections and stuff like that, which is normal. This is a primary resource. Eric was there. Now, this book does not get into the period that we're discussing, But I will get into that in a little bit, because we do know some things that Eric has said. What do we have here? This is a primary resource. He was there in the studio. He actually talks about playing on the first album, the accordion, on their own songs. It is a primary resource. I can use this, and I do. And it's a great book. I love Alan. I really love the guy. You could, like his character shines through in the book, and I just have so much respect for him. Then we get on to this, okay? Bay City Rollers on Record. Now, this is updated and revised. I have no idea what the non-updated and revised version had in it. But this is generally a secondary resource, but it also has primary resource in it because it has interviews with the people that were there. Muff Winwood is one of those people, okay? So I love this one because it kind of ties everything together, adds some extra primary resources that don't exist perhaps in the Rollers book, because, you know, the Rollers don't have to reach out to Muff Winwood, but he will, right? And he catches some people out in some lies as well, right? And so the other thing about judging the primary sources, right, is that you would hope that they kind of all agree with each other. And what I'm finding with all of these is that they do agree with each other, except on some small details about the first album. And I said in my review of Les's book that maybe he wasn't aware that the band was actually recording on their own songs while he was off and not singing at that point and then coming back and singing. I don't know. But according to Alan, he did play accordion on that first album, and he's saying, yeah, I think we played other stuff. And according to Eric, they did play on their own songs on that album. But that doesn't, Eric's information does not come up in Eric's book, because Once Upon a Star and Roll In is after that book concludes, right? So where do I get that information? So in the Bay City Rollers Army group, Karen Ingram is in there. And she does relay some actually a lot of information from Eric about why he wrote certain songs, what those songs are about, and stuff like that, right? And I consider Karen to be a very good secondary resource using the primary resource of Eric. Why? Well, I have this primary resource right here, okay, by Graham Forbes, where he discusses playing with Eric Falter's Bay City Rollers, and indeed, Karen Ingram is described as his, I guess, personal assistant, as Eric's personal assistant in this book, and is the person that he went through in order to organize the gigs with Eric, okay? So she is legit. She organized Eric's birthday party this year. Like, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that when she says, well, I talked to Eric about this, she talked to Eric about it. And what Eric says is that they played on their own songs on Rollin'. I don't know about the covers, but on the Martin Coulter stuff, who knows? The studio musicians, I think also they took some of the recordings from the earlier versions of the singles, like Saturday Night, and may have played those in there, but you'd have to talk to the producers and mixers, and it's so long ago, I have no idea if anyone would remember that, right? So then the question comes up that, well, this is the thing that's being said to me. Well, listen, Pat says you're full of shit, and it's all bullshit what you're saying, and Pat says this and Pat says that. And now, first of all, I don't know that Pat's actually saying that. So I'm not going to change my videos and say Pat says this when I've never talked to him. But secondly, I have to rely on primary resources. Okay? The people that were actually in the studio for Rollin', Once Upon a Star, Wouldn't You Like It, Dedication, and the singles, you know, and people like Muff Winwood gets involved in that. Why? Well, because if I publish something on YouTube stating, for example, that they didn't play, based on a non-primary resource, someone that wasn't there, because someone said something to them, that's hearsay. And you can definitely be sued for libel when you accuse someone, in this example, of not playing on a record when there are primary resources that say that they did. So when you go to court, they have no problems. They can provide, I only have a small amount of evidence here in comparison to the actual evidence that's out there. Okay? But right here, I have 3 primary evidence showing that they did play. So I would have to be the stupidest person on the face of the planet, having read primary resources, and then to come out and say something like that. So that's why I don't say it. That's why I don't listen. That's why I don't care who someone is. It doesn't matter. I can only use a primary resource, and that's what I'm going to do, because I don't want to, number 1, lie. Number 2, be sued, right? But other people seem to have no problem with it. Now, one of the people that posted on my original video that claimed that they didn't play until It's a Game did delete his comments. Now, if anyone ever says that I deleted his comments, that's BS. I don't delete comments. Like, I will, but I will actually state, if I delete a comment, that I've deleted it and what it was about. And I will save it as well, because I get emails for all the comments that don't get canceled by, like, YouTube seems to cancel comments. I don't know. But I get emails, and I have a record of everything that everyone said. So if anyone says they didn't say that, well, no, you did, and I have a record of it. Okay? So that's how it works. That's how research works. I don't care. I have people coming on saying, I know a guy that played the guitar instead of Eric, even when they were live. Who is he? What's the resource? Comment deleted, disappeared. I am so sick of it. That's not how the world works unless you're an anti-vaxxer or something like that. You actually have to use a primary resource. Okay? You can't just go around saying what you want. Well, I think today people think you can just go around saying what you want. And the reason for that is that wealthy people seem to be going around saying whatever they want and lying. Here's the deal. They know it's better to have their reputation good while destroying someone else's reputation, even if it costs them $100 million. They don't care. You cannot trust them for truth at all. But regular people, like Les, with this book, it's fine that he acts like he despises Eric and despises all of his songs. There's nothing illegal about that. Go on about Eric all you want. But you can't say he didn't play if he did play. That's libelous. You'll get sued. You'll lose a lot of money because there are other primary resources out there to prove you wrong. So that's what it comes down to. So I'm really sick of people coming around trying to spread this rumor over and over again. Get your primary resource. Make your own video and publish that. I don't care. But I'm a nobody that does research, and I've had to do research because of these people that, in my opinion, spread lies. I do research, and I do it based on the standard, which is primary resource is your best, secondary resource is good, but it has to have some integrity. It has to rely on some very good primary resources, and it can't just go out there and say something that completely contradicts every primary resource we have. That's how the world works. Therefore, that's how my channel works. I am not going to spread libelous rumors on my channel just because someone's feelings are hurt. I'm sorry. That's the reality of life. Anyone who went to school should know this, but this is a... Maybe I should become a grade 9 high school teacher. Maybe that should have been my calling in life. I don't know. Because this is so easy for me to describe in comparison to the work that I actually have to do that is so complicated and difficult in comparison. Anyway, that's why that is the case. So I would love for people to, if you're going to comment something, have a primary resource. And you know, here's the other thing about primary resources. If they're published after someone is deceased, like if you're accusing someone of something and they're deceased, that takes away a lot of the credibility because they don't have the ability to defend themselves, right? And yeah, so there's that part too. So not just because someone writes something and claims to be have been there doesn't mean that it's absolutely true. They have to be putting themselves in a position where if what they're saying is a lie, then they can be sued for libel, right? And if they're doing it in the safety of, well, no, the person no longer exists or whatever, you have to take that into consideration when you're, considering even a primary resource. So I'm not saying that primary resources are are flawless. Statistics can sometimes be wrong. The questions that are used to gather statistics can be tainted. There are all these other problems. But, you start with the best and you work your way down. And that's what I've tried to do. So I've really enjoyed reading all these books. I have Nobby's book on the way, so I'm really interested to read that. And if anyone has any other books that they think are good and that rely on, primary data, right? Not just secondary speculation without, the without real interviews and stuff like that. Anyway, yeah, I'd love to read that. I'm kind of getting sad that my reading is slowing down and coming to an end. But anyway, Nobby, if you're out there, I'm really looking forward to reading your book. It's going to provide, to me, the most exciting period of the Bay City Rollers in some ways was before they were the international success. And so I can't wait to read his book. I'm sure it's going to be great. I've heard nothing but good things, and I'll do a book review of it after. And my book reviews aren't this is true or this is false or anything. It's just kind of more about, the information that they're providing and how useful it is and how I care about it and stuff like that. So anyway, I've got to get back to writing a song, and this has been long enough. But I hope people understand that when sometimes my videos are long and I pontificate and things seem slow, it's because of things like this that I'm covering some bases. Because I know these people will always be out there and they're constantly going to come back. Well, this is how I do my research. That can't change. Why? Because that's how everyone does research. And screaming at someone doesn't change the fact that your primary resources are the absolute best, especially if they match up. Oh, and one thing I wanted to say with regards to primary sources and secondary sources, and it has to do with another video I did. It was a review of Eric Faulkner's 20th Century Songs. I also went through the Bay City Rollers Limited, the two companies there. There was actually three, but whatever. And the name changes, and then the transferring of the trademark, I guess, or whatever, Bay City Rollers around. And I think the thing that you'll notice about that video, and I think people can learn from this, is that I used government resources, and I used the resource of a letter from a lawyer, and I quoted those. And I think in any other part of that, I may have speculated, but I would have also said, well, who knows? Because I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know why those things happened. But that's another example of using a primary resource. And it's so funny because for me, it's just like, well, I better do it this way. I better do this. I better read this. I better use this. Because I was taught in school, isn't it funny, that you use good resources. Who knew, right? That what you learn in school actually becomes useful later on in life, right? That's how you do things. That's how I was taught. If I just handed in a paper in university with just my opinions in it, I would have flunked out earlier than I actually did. But anyway, that's another topic for another day. Have a good night.